Welcome back to another informative video from American Original Dollhouse Miniatures and More. Today I will be assembling the American Barn Birdhouse that you see here. Inside your box, along with the instructions, you're going to find an insert sheet. Read through that insert sheet thoroughly before you begin. That will cover the parts that are in the box, so you can familiarize yourself with which parts you are looking for at the time. And also it will cover some of the stuff that you're going to need. Read through that thoroughly, and also it's a good idea to take the time and read through the instructions themselves. Although it's not necessary, we will cover everything thoroughly. It does help to give you a little jump start on the process of what we're going to do. Now with that, hit pause, go through your list, read your instructions, and we will be back for step one. All right, now that you've familiarized yourself with the contents of your box, we're ready to start step number one. I have the front panel and a side panel along with the base to use as alignment. So I have the base, I pull the two panels tightly to the base and also tightly together. And then we are going to apply one strip of tape down the seam, being careful not to push too hard on the joint between the two, because the panels will flip. So I'm holding the panels flat with my hands and pushing the tape into place. We're also going to put one across at the top and thoroughly press the tape into place. You want the tape to stick really well. And also we're going to put one down at the bottom. We're going to continue that with the back panel next. So we'll move the base over, line up the back panel, make sure it is again tight to the bottom, tight to the base, and tight to the side piece. Again, we will put one piece of tape down the seam, holding the panels flat. We'll also put one at the top and one at the bottom. And finally, we will do the last side panel. Again, the same way, lining up the base, pushing the panels together, making sure they are flush with the base. One strip on the seam, one on the top and one on the bottom. Now just double check that all the tape is pressed firmly into place. You want everything real firm. Also, what I didn't mention is I did take a dry dust cloth to these pieces before taping them so the tape sticks better. Make sure it's dry though, do not use your damp one. We can put the base aside. Now just grabbing the two front and back panels, we're just gonna flip the whole thing over, upside down, or inside up in this case. And with our glue bottle, we are going to apply glue to the bottom of the valleys. I'm going to stay away from the very bottom and the very top. So I'm just going to apply a rice-sized bead of glue, a little bit bigger is all right too, to all three sections. And there's plenty of working time in this glue, so it's not a rush. And also I am going to do the higher part, the part closer to you of the side panel valley on the outside. So I'm also going to run a bead down there. And then we're going to stand it up, again grabbing the front and the back panel. We'll stand it up and close the panels like an accordion until all four panels meet. And we are going to apply three pieces of tape now to the side, the last side that's not taped, making sure that they are flush. We'll start with one piece first, and then using the hay door, we're going to check that the body is square. So just put that on the inside, and I will show you that in a second. Put that on the inside and just make sure everything is square. and lined up before putting the last 2 pieces of tape on. So again, we'll do the top piece. Start in the front, pull it tight, and you can pull this tape fairly tight without it ripping. So go ahead and pull it as tight as you can and wrap it around. We'll do number 3. And that is it for the body. Make sure all the other tape is still well stuck in place. Now it may move a little bit as the joint closes. The tape might move a little bit, but that's okay. Again, just make sure that it's square. And if it's not square, just adjust it a little bit as necessary. All right, with the body thoroughly taped up, I flipped it over on its side so that I can glue in the screw blocks. There are 4 screw blocks, 1 for each corner. We're gonna do one side at a time here and let them set up for a few minutes before flipping it over and doing the other side. You want to apply a pretty decent amount of glue on these blocks. And I will actually run 2 beads on these because these are going to hold the bottom in, and you want to make sure that there is enough that when you screw them, they don't pop off. So we'll put plenty of glue on there and insert the first one, and you want the block to be about a 1/16 of an inch or a little bit more from the bottom of the birdhouse. So you don't want it all the way flush with the bottom. That way it will pull the base tight when you screw the base in. Again, we'll do the other side. I'm sorry, the same side. We'll do another block for that side. And again, 1/16 or so, or a little bit more is okay. Not too much more than a 1/16. And now normally I would set these and let these dry, but from experience, I know I can actually continue and do the other side. So I'm gonna do the other side and hope they don't fall out. I would recommend waiting at least 10 minutes before continuing. So again, a 1/16 of an inch. Make sure there's plenty of glue. And with the last one, again, plenty of glue on this one. This is the one time you use a pretty fair amount of glue, more than on the rest of the joints. All right, with those in, we can now set the body aside, allow it to dry, and we will move on to step number 2. All right, welcome back to step number 2, installing the roof flares. Now, there are 2 middle section roofs, and they are going to have a pencil mark on one side. Now, that's to indicate which side is the 75-degree miter, and it also is the side that lines up with the roof flare. So the 2 pencil marks you want to line together. Those are going to be your 75-degree miters, and make sure they are tightly pressed together, and we will apply tape to the seam, being careful not to push down again on the seam. You want to be holding the panels while you're pressing the tape in place so that they don't flip. All right, flip the panel over, and again, as with the V's that we did, we will insert a bead of glue, right size. Now you don't need much glue. And just stay about a 1/4 inch or 3/8 of an inch from both ends. And then you won't have to worry about squeeze out. We will pull the 2 pieces together tightly so the seam is fairly closed. I'm just going to wipe off, there's just a little excess glue that's squeezed out there. I'm just going to wipe that off. And then apply 2 pieces of tape I'm going to wrap it around one side, pull fairly firm, not too much. You will rip the tape on the seam, and wrap that piece around. Then I'm just going to put another piece of tape on the other side, and I will do the other roof flare. Go ahead and hit pause, put your two roof flares together and set those aside. We'll see you back here for step number 3. All right, welcome back to step number 3 of the American Barn Birdhouse. We are going to now install the roof extensions. There are 4 small pieces that you'll find, the roof extensions. Now there is a miter on one side that is going to line up with the miter on your top panel roof. We are going to use, in this case, you can use a base or any one of the straight pieces, but in this case we're going to use a silo side piece or a silo wall to align, and we want to make sure we have the correct one installed. So now I am installing it to this side, so I want to make sure that I have the correct miter for that side that you can see there. So with the silo panel, I will line the two up like so. So they are nice and tight together and flush, whoops, and flush with the silo wall. So right there, I will apply a small amount of glue closer to the top, just the right size bead again, staying away from the edges, and glue that in place. You can wipe any excess glue with your damp rag if you need to. And I'm just going to apply one little piece of tape just to hold that in place. Now the other side, you're going to use your other side pieces, which are these two. And we're going to do it the same way. Use the silo, line it up, apply our glue, and stick that in place. Again, taking care to line up the miter side. It's very important that these sides line up perfectly because your roof is going to want to close, and if they don't line up perfect, you're not going to be able to close the top of your roof. So I will put another piece of tape on that one. Do the same with the other roof panel, and we'll see you back here for step number 4. Welcome back to step number 4. We are now going to install the outer trim of the 2 barn doors. I've laid out all the parts that are in the parts bag. For this, there are a couple of pieces that are similar in size. One is for the hay door. Those are the smaller ones. The 8 that are slightly bigger, those are going to be your barn door side panels that are going to go on the outside of the barn door. So I'm going to take 4 of those, and we will move everything else out of the way for now. And we're not going to need any of the other parts for a little while. I'm also going to use the small base to help me align the 2 pieces with the outside edge. I want the trim to be at the absolute outside edge of the barn door itself. So we want to make sure that that's nice and even with the edge. With that, there's also a smoother side to the barn door. We want to use the smoothest side, and you can see, I don't know if you can tell in the video, but that's the rough side and that is the smooth side. So we want the smoother side to face outward. So that's going to be the side that we're going to put the trim on. So let's start with a small bead of glue to one of the outside trim pieces. Now, it's a really small bead that's required here, so there's not a lot of glue that you need on this little piece of trim. Again, we're going to use the small base, line it up, push the two tightly to the base piece and press firmly into place. And you can use your toothpick if you have one to wipe off any excess glue that comes out. It works really well for wiping up the glue in these small little areas. Flip the door over. Taking care not to move the first piece, we're going to do the second outer piece, again with a very thin bead of glue right down the center. Line up the outside. I'm going to put it in first, and then I am going to push it up to the base, making sure I am flush top and bottom and flush with the side. Press it firmly in place, and we will set these barn doors aside and allow them to dry thoroughly before finishing the barn doors. Do the same with the other barn door, and we will be back for step number 5. All right, welcome back to step number 5, installing the cover for the silo ladder door combination. You're gonna find in the parts bag is your little tiny cover. Again, these have a better side. There's a rough side that's slightly lighter, and then there's the darker smooth side. You want the smooth side up, again, also with the silo roof cover itself. Now this is just as simple as lining everything up, top and bottom. So we're just gonna apply a couple of drops of glue, and eyeballing this is just fine. It's pretty hard to put anything on there to line it up with, but just a couple of drops of glue. It doesn't take much. It's a very small part, and we're just gonna eyeball that and get it as close to exact as possible. And then while holding it, I'm just gonna wipe the little extra glue squeeze out there with my finger. We will set that aside, allow it to dry, and we'll be back for step number 6. Welcome back. We are now gonna continue with step number 6, trimming out the hay doors. Now again, there is gonna be a smoother side, so make sure we're working on the smooth side. So the smooth side up. We're gonna have 4 outer pieces of trim. We're gonna have 4 top pieces of trim, and we're gonna have 2 bottom pieces of trim. We'll start again with using the base, lining the base up so we can put the first side trim piece in. Now we're gonna do all of the trim pieces at one time here, so you want to take care not to move any of the parts that you already have in as you're doing this. And don't worry about the glue squeeze out yet. We will come back and fix that. Now on this one, I'm going to make sure that I'm flush with the top. So I'm using my small base panel just to make sure that I am flush on top and also flush on the side. So now with the top one, with the side one in place, I am going to install one top piece. And we will line that up. Again, pushing it tight to the base. Be careful not to push it towards the outside of the trim piece that we already have installed. We don't want to move the first one. Check to see which side we're working on. We will do the second top piece. Again, I am going to use the small base to line it up. Without moving that other top piece, we're going to place it in. Now I'm just going to hold the one piece with my thumb while I push it in, so I don't move the other one. Then on with the bottom piece. Again, we'll flip it over, line it up with the base. In this case, the bottom sticks out a little bit, so I'll slide it over and put it in place first. And I'll slide the base over just a little bit. We can always trim that side piece off later on. So I'll push the bottom piece in, and actually it's hardly anything hanging over there, so it's really just a matter of sanding it. We'll take the other side piece, make sure we're working with the right side. So check the fit, check the piece, flip it over. And again, a small bead of glue. Now we don't have to line this one up because we're going to push it tight with the other two. So drop it in place. Now I'm going to hold the top with that finger, the bottom with that finger, and I'm just going to press it into place. Now I'm just going to hold these for a couple of seconds while the glue sets up a little bit. And then I am going to take my toothpick again. And before the glue dries, I'm just going to wipe it off. We'll clean the toothpick off on our rag. And just continue wiping off the excess glue until you have it all off. All right, with that one done, we'll set that aside and we will finish the other one. We will see you back here for step number 7. Welcome back to step number 7, building the silo. I have laid out the 6 silo panels with the miter facing the top, all of them in the same direction. I'm going to line them up fairly tight, and using the base as a guide, we are going to line up the bottoms. So all the bottoms are flush, and also all the panels are tight together. Again, we want to wipe the panels to make sure they are dust free so the tape sticks well. And all the bottoms are lined up. They are tight together, not too tight together. We don't want to force them together. We just want them to be tightly together. Small gaps are okay, so don't worry about those little tiny gaps there. That's just fine. Now we're going to apply 4 pieces of tape, starting at the top, being careful not to move the panels while you're applying the tape. Move down to the bottom one, and you can put a little bit of pressure on the tape by pulling on it slightly. You don't want to put too much on it. You don't want to force the panels together. What can happen is they can ride up on the miter, so the panel is a little, they overlap slightly, and you don't want that. So don't pull too tightly, just enough, just kind of snug the tape so it just kind of holds them together. And the 4th piece, and we can put the bottom or base panel aside, grabbing the top. We're going to flip them over. Again, as with the other steps with the valleys, we are going to apply glue to the very, again, as with the other steps with valleys, we are going to apply glue to the bottom of the valley, staying away from the very top and the very bottom. Again, with the right size bead, we're going to apply to each one. If you hold the glue bottle straight up and down, the tip goes all the way down to the bottom, and that's where you want it. You want it at the very bottom of the V. So repeat with all 5 valleys. And again, it doesn't take a whole lot of glue. A right size bead is plenty of glue. And then also to one edge. Now this one we're going to do a little closer to the top or the inside so the glue doesn't seep out. So I'm just going to do another small bead. I'm just using my hand on the table as a guide to guide that bead of tape in. We will flip it over. I'm sorry, I'm not going to flip it over. We're just going to close the panels like an accordion. Bring the top together. Setting it on the table, we just want to make sure the bottom is flat, the top is flat, and we are good to go. We will apply a few pieces of tape that I did not cut. I'm just going to use a rubber band to hold this in place temporarily. If you have rubber bands, you can use rubber bands also in place of the last piece of tape. I prefer the tape because you can actually pull the tape tighter than a rubber band without the rubber band breaking. I'm just going to get a couple of pieces of tape. And the last seam, I'm going to lay it down and just pull the seam, pull the tape tight so it pulls the seam together. And I don't know if you can see, but the seam basically just goes away. We'll do that again. Whoops. Do that again in the middle. Pull it tight. That's what happens when you pull it too tight. And we'll get the rubber band out of our way and put one more piece towards the top. And there you have it. Now you can see that all the panels all the gaps are very tight. All right, we'll set the silo aside, allow that to dry, and we'll move on to step number 8. Welcome back to step number 8, building the silo roof. I have the 6 silo roof panels laid out. I'm going to start by lining up 3 of the roof panels, taking extreme care to make sure that the bottoms and tops are lined up and that the gaps are nice and tight. I will stick one piece of tape across the middle of that. We will add another roof panel, line that one up carefully. Another roof panel. Again, apply a piece of tape across the center. And finally, the last roof panel. And lining that up. Press the tape firmly in place. I'm just going to test the fit, and all you have to do is push the bottom panels together and it will close the gap. The gap looks good. We'll flip it over and apply glue to the bottom of the V's again. And hitting each one of them. And also to the top of one of the last open panels. Just one side is all you need. And we can close the roof again. Now just wipe any excess glue, squeeze out from the bottom. It's not that important since the bottom will be hidden, but you don't want any bumps that'll keep it away from your base. Finally, I'm going to take one piece of tape across the final seam, pulling the last seam together. Don't pull too hard on these panels. You will pull the roof apart. And just check to make sure everything is lined up and it looks pretty good. If there's any minor deviations, you can always sand those when you're all done. That's it for the silo roof. We'll set that aside again, allow that to dry thoroughly, and we will be back for step number 9. Welcome back to step number 9, building the cupola roof. Now that you've built the silo roof, the cupola roof should be no problem. There's only 4 panels here. You want to line these up very carefully again. You want to make sure that the top, where the rooster is going to go in, you want to make sure those line up perfectly. If they don't, you're going to have a hard time getting the rooster in. You're going to have to sand more of the rooster pole to get the rooster in. So take care to line those up. Again, I'm going to line up 3 panels at a time, making sure that they are tight together. Apply one piece of tape across the center. Add the 4th panel, again, taking exceptional care just to make sure that that top line, the top piece lines up perfectly. And apply another piece of tape and just press that firmly into place. Again, we're going to check the fit before applying any more tape. Make sure everything lines up. And we are good. You can also check the fit of the dowel at this point just to make sure that it fits well, and it fits perfectly in there, so we are good. We will Flip the panels over, apply glue again to the bottom of the V's like in previous steps. And to one side, staying away. In fact, I'm going to do two sides this time. Taking care to stay away from the top of the roof. We don't want any glue to get inside of the cupola mount. I'm sorry, of the rooster mount. Again, we will fold that closed after I get a piece of tape to hold it in place. We'll fold it closed. And again, about the middle, pull the sections together tightly. And just make sure everything lines up well. And one last test of the cupola mount, and it is absolutely perfect. We will set the cupola roof aside and we will be back for step number 10. Welcome back to step number 10. We are now going to assemble the two base sections. There is a pencil line that crosses two of the panels, and those are the two that you're going to line up. So you want those both facing in the same direction. That is going to be where your silo and silo connector building mount. So we are going to apply glue along the edge of the small panel. Again, there's our pencil mark, and there's our biscuit slot. You can see the biscuit slot in there. We are going to apply glue to the biscuit slot itself. Insert. Get plenty of glue in there. You don't want the base falling apart. Insert the biscuit. And then we are going to apply glue on the panel itself, staying away from the front and back and kind of keeping it right down the middle. Also, you want to insert glue into the biscuit slot of the large base, and just make sure we get enough in there. Lay the two panels down and quickly slide them in before your glue drips. And now I'm going to use one of the roof panels I did earlier to make sure that we are lined up. And we just want them to be lined up. We're going to apply a couple pieces of tape. Now, don't pull these pieces too tight because you will pull the panels up. It'll cause the small panel to raise, and you don't want that. You want them to stay flush to your surface. Apply a second piece of tape. Again, don't pull tight. And we will now set the base aside, allow that to dry, and we will be back for step number 11. Welcome back to step number 11, completing the barn roof. Our barn roof sections that we assembled earlier have now dried. We have the middle with the flare, and then the top with the extensions. We want to line up the middles like so, and just make sure that they are lined up top and bottom, and slide the middle sections in, line those up also so they are flush top and bottom. Again, we're just going to take our dry rag and just lightly brush the dust off, and then apply a piece along the center seam, up and down. Let's do a short piece. Do another seam. And do the final seam. And just press the tape firmly into place. Now we're going to put one at the top, one at the bottom, and I'm pulling these just a little bit to apply a little bit of tension to pull the panels in together. Finally, one in the middle. Again, just a gentle pull of the tape. And now I am going to flip the roof up and close it, test fit, make sure that all the panels are tight, and they are. And I'm also going to place it on top of our now dry barn roof. I'm sorry, our now dry barn body, and make sure that the top lines up and that everything is tight. So you want, let's see, you want to make sure that that seam at the top is tight. All right, we'll take the roof off of the body. Again, like the other steps, we are going to apply glue to the bottom of the valley, staying away from the front and the back. And again, about a rice size. The middle section, we want to also glue the end pieces, so make sure we have glue all the way to the end. And again with the last section, I'm going to now fold the roof up, and any glue that seeps out at this stage, you want to make sure that you wipe that completely before we set the roof on top of the body to dry. You don't want the roof accidentally being glued to the body at this time. We're not ready for that. So again, I'll place the roof on top of the body, center it, and I'm going to apply tape to the front. And just pull the two pieces together, applying pressure on the tape. Double check to make sure it is tight, and it is tight. And we'll do the same with the back side, or in this case actually the front side. And again, pull it enough, just enough tension that it pulls the pieces together. And we have the tape wrapped completely around. Everything's held tight in place. We will now set this aside, allow the roof to completely dry. When we come back, we will be working on step number 12. Welcome back. We are now going to do steps 12 and 13 together. For this, we're going to need the roof, this cupola roof that we glued earlier. We're going to need a cup, a mug of some sort to place our roof in, and we're going to place our roof upside down in that cup. We're also going to need the glue block. And for step number 13, we're going to need the two silo connecting wall roof panels, or connecting building roof panels. All right, with the roof upside down in our cup, we will apply glue to all four sides. And again, just a thin bead all the way around. And drop that into place. All right, we will set this aside. We'll just leave it in the cup, set it aside, and allow that to dry, and we will continue on with step number 13. We have our two panels. Now you can see there's two different miters on these panels. There's a 45-degree miter on one side, a 45 and a second 45 on the other side. We want the single miters together. So we are going to line those up together. And if you need something to line them up with, you can always use another block to kind of line them to get them straight. And apply a small piece of tape to that. Now hold that in place. And test close it to make sure it's good. All right, again, as with the other miter joints, we're gonna apply glue to the bottom, close the panel, and apply a piece of tape all the way around to the other side to hold that together. That's it for our connector body, or our connector roof. We'll set that aside with the other parts and allow that to dry. When we come back, we will be working on step number 14. All right, welcome back. We're now going to take a little bit of time to sand our CNC machine cut parts. That would be the 3 windows, the 3 barn windows, the 2 vents for the cupola, the bird perch / pulley, the rooster, and also the barn door, or sorry, the silo ladder assembly along with the roof. The sandpaper comes with your kit. You can use that to sand the edges. I'm not actually going to sand the parts right now, but do make sure that you are wearing an N95 face mask when you're sanding any parts. It's not a bad idea just to do the parts, to sand the parts outside too. There's not that many parts to sand. Mainly it's just this for right now. Later on we will sand parts of the birdhouse before you do any painting to it. But just wear a mask, take your time, sand the parts, and we'll see you back here for step number 15, installing the windows. All right, welcome back. We're on step number 15, installing the barn windows. Now on the front of the barn, there's the front of the barn. There's going to be a window on both sides. However, on the back of the barn, to make room for the silo, there's no window on the silo side. So if you're in doubt, you can place it on the base and you can see where your silo goes. So we have, and I've already cut the template out and placed the template in place. I have a template that says barn edge over here, and then there's an alignment for the window. The window goes between the 2 lines and flush with that piece. So again, finding the rougher side of the window, that's going to be our glue side. And just a really, really small thin bead. And just going to put a little bit in the center of the window. I'm going to flip it over, line it up carefully, and adhere one window. All right, I'm going to pull the template off, and I will flip the barn, or spin the barn around, and we'll do the other side. Again, line up. Actually, I'll do the other side. So now we flip it upside down. So the barn side is on the other side and the window in the same spot. Again, just apply a small bead of glue around the window. And attach the window, lining it up with your template again. All right, I'm just gonna flip the template over, do the other side, and we will be ready to move on to step number 16. We'll see you back then. Welcome back. We are on step number 16, building the cupola body. I have the 2 larger cupola walls and then the 2 smaller cupola walls. The smaller cupola walls have the machine cuts on the back side, so you want to make sure that those back sides go towards the middle of the cupola so they're not visible. We will also use our roof to help align the bottom of this piece. The roof has been sitting long enough. I'm just going to pull part of the middle tape off so I can use that to align just enough that I can get the cupola body on there. So we'll lay one large wall down and apply glue. Now make sure it's the right side. Machine in. Apply glue to one side of the the small wall. Using my finger, I'm just going to make sure it is flush with the bottom and flush with the side. And then I am going to do the other side. Again, making sure that the cut is on the inside. Apply glue. And again, using my finger, I am going to line it again with the bottom and also with the side, just to make sure it's flush on the side. Then I'm going to apply glue to both wall panels and then place the last large panel on. Now make sure the short side is down. And again, we're going to make sure we line it up with the V. Taking care to line those up. Now I'm just going to squeeze them together and temporarily just place it on the roof and just take a look at the fit to see how it fits and see if I need to adjust it. And one of the walls was up a little high, so I pushed that down. We are lined up. And that's it for the cupola body. We will set that aside. You can tape it if you want. There's no real reason to tape it, but you can tape it if you want. And just set that aside. We'll allow that to dry. We'll be back for step number 17. All right, welcome back. We're on step number 17 and step number 18. We are going to glue our ladder assembly to the silo along with putting our post into our rooster. The first thing we're going to do is temporarily place our roof on top of the silo so we can kind of get an idea of where we want to place the ladder. Now it's personal preference as to how high you want to place it. You want it in the center of one of the panels. I prefer it fairly high up, but again, you can use your personal preference. So I'm using the roof to kind of check for the height, and that looks to be good right there. I like that, so I'll take the roof off, set that aside, place my silo down, and apply real small dots of glue just to the corners of the rungs. It doesn't take much, just a dot, like 2 dots on each one. Go all the way up. And a little more at the top where it's a little wider. And just some down the side. And remembering where our placement was, I am going to just eyeball the ladder to get it centered in that silo wall panel. Close is good enough. All right, we'll set that aside, allow that to dry. Okay, for the rooster, I'm just going to place a small dot of glue inside of the hole of the rooster. You can use a clothespin if you wish to hold this in an upright position. I don't have a clothespin, so I'm not going to do that. But you just want to put 1 dot of glue in there, install your dowel, turning it to get it all the way so it's seated all the way in, wipe any excess glue, and then you just want to make sure that your dowel is straight up and down. So you want to line it up this way, and you also want to turn it and line it up this way. So an eyeballing is just fine. You should be able to get it perfect just like that. And just a little more adjusting there. And there you have it. We're going to set this aside, taking care not to bump the dowel. We don't want to move the dowel, and we don't want to set it down too hard so the dowel moves. So we'll set that aside, allow that to dry. And with that, we will move on to step number 19. We will see you back for that. All right, welcome back. We're on step number 19. We're gonna finish up the 2 barn doors. So I have 8 small top and bottom pieces. I have 4 of the Z or cross brackets. I have 4 of the upright pieces. We're going to start by installing 4 top and bottom pieces to the first door. Again, just applying a small amount of glue. We're going to place the first top one in. And I'm just using my finger to make sure that it is flush with the top. And we will do the same with the bottom. And pushing it tight to the outside, and again, finger to make sure it is flush. Now I'm going to do one upright to connect those two. And you can make any adjustments that are necessary before the glue dries. There are none needed, so we'll continue. Another top. And another bottom. And now you just want to be careful when you're putting the last upright in that you don't disturb any of the other pieces that you've already installed. So just apply a small amount of glue and slide that one into place, making sure it is tight to everything else. And now you're going to have a gap in the middle that's supposed to be there. And now we're just going to test fit one of the Z brackets and make sure that it fits, and it does. We'll check the other side, making sure we put it in the same direction. And that one's a little tight, so all I'm going to do is just one pass to take off just a little bit of the top. It doesn't take much, so I'm just going to take one pass on both of them, top and bottom. And we'll try it again and see how we did. And there we have it. So it doesn't take very much to get it to fit. Now you want to make sure that they're going in the same direction. So the tops will go in. So you just want to make sure you do them both the same way. So I'm going to flip this one over so the bottom is up. Same with this one. And again, apply our glue and drop the Z bracket into place, making sure everything looks tight. Double check we're gluing the right side, the correct side, and glue the last Z bracket into place. And just twist it a little bit to make sure it is tight with everything else. All right, we'll do the same with the other door, and then we will come back and we will be on step number 20 when we come back. All right, welcome back. We're on step number 20 and 21. We're going to attach the connecting building to the silo, and we're also going to attach the cupola to the cupola roof. I've attached 2 pieces of tape to the ladder so I'm not slowed down. I want to be able to flip this over so the ladder is facing down. And at the bottom, I am going to install the 2 connecting building walls. Also, I am going to connect the roof that we put together earlier. So I'll remove the tape from the roof. And we will glue the first wall section in. Apply glue to the side of the wall, and the miter, the high side, goes on the inside, and we're going to come in about 1/16 of an inch from the edge of the silo, roughly about 1/16 of an inch. Don't feel that you have to be precise, because No one will ever know if it's not. The second wall will do the same. And attach that also in the same manner, 1/16 of an inch in. And the tricky part, we want to add glue to the top of these wall panels. So just a couple of dabs, and then also to the one side of the roof, staying away from the bottoms. And we're carefully place the roof into position so that everything is flush with the bottom and in contact. And we'll set that aside, allow that to dry. On to the cupola body. We're going to take our cupola body and apply glue to the top of the cupola body. And with our cupola roof still in the cup, we're going to center the body on that glue block. Now you may wish to sand the cupola body before attaching it to the cupola roof. It's much easier to sand the edges beforehand. And we'll set that aside, let that dry. And when we come back, we will be working on step number 22. With the cupola body freshly glued and still in the cup, we're going to attach the two vents. So one to each side of the cupola body. And just apply a small bead of glue around the vent, and also on the little tabs, doesn't hurt to have some in there also. And then being gentle not to move anything, because we just glued the body on, I'm going to center the vent in both directions, approximately anyway. And just hold it for a couple seconds and allow it to set up enough that it's not going to move. And then we'll go on to the other side. Again, glue that up in the same way. Now you're going to want to make sure that these two roofs are at the same height. So we'll put it in place, get it about in the center, and just look at it from the side and make sure that the two vents line up. Hopefully you can see that. But I'm just double checking to make sure that they are lined up. And this one's a little low or high, whichever way you look at it. And there we are. We can set the whole cup aside, allow those to dry, and we'll move on to step number 23. Is our next step. We'll see you back here for step number 23. All right, welcome back. We're on step number 23. We are going to install the doors, the two hay doors or the top doors, and the two barn doors that are now dry. I've taken the time to remove the tape from the roof and I believe from everything else. I've also cut out the template for the barn door placement and place that just above where the barn door is going to go. That's going to help me center the barn door in the proper location. I'm going to apply glue to the barn door first. And just around the outside of it is enough. And I'm just going to do a little bit in the center of it. Now, you could place it either way with the Z brackets going in or upside down, the Z-brackets going out. I like the Z-brackets going in. Personal preference, do it however you like. All right, using my fingers, I'm just gonna make sure it is flush with the bottom and it is centered with my template. And there you have it. Now I'm going to temporarily place the roof on so I can do the top hay door. I'll start with the front again, applying glue around the perimeter and also around the bird hole, and just fill in a little bit here and there. It really doesn't take that much. I'm just going to lean it forward a little bit so my roof is flat, and place the hay door like so. All right. Now you can let these dry for about 10-15 minutes before doing the other side. We will go on to the other side when we come back, or I will finish the other side. When we come back, we will be on step number 24. So we will see you back for step 24. All right, welcome back. We are now on step number 24, installing the silo roof. And we will first just double check the fit. Make sure it lays right on there, and when you place it on there, it will just kind of fall into place. Just kind of wiggle it around until it doesn't move easily. Then to pop it off, we'll apply glue to the inside of the miter, all the way around. Again, just about a rice-sized bead is fine. And carefully place the roof back on, making sure that it is in the right place. You can also look at it to make sure it's centered, and that's good. We'll put that aside, allow that to dry. While that's drying, we'll move on to step number 25. We're going to attach the cupola to the roof. Our roof is dried. I've removed the tape, and the cupola also has dried, or should be dry enough to move on, so we can install that. On your inside your insert sheet, again, we have a template that will help line up the cupola roof. Now there's two marks. There's the cupola center, and then there's the roof center. We'll start by marking the center of the roof. Now we want to mark it down below where the cupola is going to go. So we'll mark that first of all. And starting from the edge of the roof, not the edge of the extension, but the edge of the roof itself. We'll line up the 0 and look for the center mark. Take our pencil and we'll mark a little dot at the roof center line. Now to make sure that we have it at absolute center, I'll remove the cupola roof. I will flip the template over so my 0 is now on the other side. And I will again look for the roof center mark, and we line up perfectly so we have the center. If you're off a little bit, for instance, if you had sanded part of the roof, then what you would do is make a second mark and then find the middle of those two marks. You don't necessarily have to be that picky, but that's what you would do. Now also, we will mark the center of the cupola itself. So again, starting from 0, find the cupola center mark and mark that center. And then all we have to do is line those two marks up and we're good to go. So I'm going to apply glue. Fairly liberal on this. I find myself picking the birdhouse up, by the cupola roof a lot when I move it. So you want a little extra glue on this. No, it doesn't take that much, but just a little extra to help make sure it stays in place if you do happen to pick it up that way. Or maybe I shouldn't just pick it up that way. We'll line up our 2 marks and drop our cupola roof into place. All right, we'll set the roof and the cupola aside to dry. All right, welcome back. We're now gonna work on step number 26. We're gonna attach the barn body to the base. I've already inserted 3 of the 4 screws. I'm gonna use a drill driver. However, a Phillips number 2 Phillips screwdriver is just fine. I just wanna speed things up a little bit. So I'm going to insert from the bottom, which is the side with the miter or the indent there for the screw. I'm going to insert the screw so 1/8 of an inch of the screw is protruding through the top of the base. So we want all 4 of them to be about 1/8 of an inch coming out of the bottom. Okay, so 1/8 of an inch coming out of the bottom. Flip the base over. And now we are going to put the front is going to go towards the long side, and the silo side obviously goes to where the silo compartment is. Now I'm going to make it even spacing on both sides, and the back side is just going to be about a 1/16 or a little bit more sticking out beyond the door. So about a 1/16 of an inch beyond the door. Once you have it about center, or once you have it directly in the center, we're going to push down on the house, and that's going to indent the screws into the soft pine blocks. And that's one of the reasons we use the soft pine for this, is it is easier to screw into the pine, and plus you can continually screw in. Now I'm going to just turn these a couple of turns, pushing down as I do, and do all 4 of them. And then you'll notice that there is going to be a gap around there. To eliminate that gap, what we're going to want to do is loosen one side of screws. So I'm going to take these screws so they're no longer in the body. And then I'm going to push and reinsert that screw. And that side's actually tight this time, which means that side's going to be tight. We'll flip it over and do the same with this side. So I'm going to loosen it up until the body moves, or until the base moves again. Do the other side, and again, push and screw in. And that's it. All right, we have the base attached. We can now move on with step number 27. All right, when we come back, we'll be working on step number 27. All right, moving on to step number 27. We're now going to attach the silo to the barn body itself. So apply a liberal amount of glue to the entire connecting building side here. So you want to, except for the bottom, apply a decent amount and stay away from the bottom. We don't want to inadvertently glue the silo to the base. We want the base to be able to be removed to clean out. And we will line that up so it is center on the small base, and just eyeball it is good enough. So we'll get it to where we think it looks good. and press it into place. All right. All right, moving on to the final few finishing touches here. Step number 28. This is the time that we're going to attach the corner trim. We're also going to do the bird perch or the pulley. We're going to glue the roof into place. And finally, we're going to install the rooster. Now the rooster, I don't actually glue the rooster in until I get the birdhouse in the place that it's going to stay, just because it is a fragile piece and it could break off just because it sits so high. However you want to do it, just be careful not to break the rooster off of the top. With that, let's start with the corner trim. Using one of the side pieces of trim, I'm going to use that to line up the front, or in this case, the back trim. And that's this piece right here. So I'll use the side trim just as an alignment tool to place that. And hopefully you can see that. And that will allow me to get it right to the edge, like so. So I'm going to apply glue to the correct side. And then again, using the side piece, I am going to pull it tight, make sure it's pushed down, and just hold it for a couple of seconds. All right, and while that glue is still wet, I'm going to glue in the side piece that goes on it. That way I can adjust the two to make sure everything is tight and flush. And just using your fingers, just align the two pieces so they are even and flush. And just hold the pieces here for about 30 seconds or so to allow it to set up enough that it's not going to move on you. And then I will install the last three and we will come back with the final finishing touches. All right, welcome back. I am on step number 28, the finishing touches. I have all four corner trim pieces, or all four corners are trimmed out and finished. Next, we will glue the bird perch in place. And that is that little guy right there. Just a little bit of glue. Actually, we're going to test fit first to make sure that it fits in the opening. And it's pretty snug, but it does fit. I'm just going to soften the edges a little bit with sandpaper to allow it to fit a little better. It doesn't take a lot. You don't want to take too much off. You want it to be a pretty firm fit. And again, the pulley side will go down. That's where the hole is. We'll test fit, and that is good. I can get it back out. And just a little bit of glue around the pulley, and then also you can put a drop just on the little nub that comes out there. Make sure you got it in the right direction and slide it in place. You can also glue it from the back side if you're worried about it being secure, but I'm not, so we will leave it like that. Next, we're going to attach the barn roof. And I am just going to apply glue to both the front and the back, all the way down both sides, and I'm just going to put a little bit on the hay door also. Same with the back side. And again, also a little bit on the hay door, just for added extra security. And then I'm just going to eyeball it. You can measure if you want. It's about 3/4 of an inch overhang on both sides. But I find just using my fingers to kind of guide it into place is good enough, and it ends up pretty centered just by doing that. Now I'm just going to check the fit on the front and the back to make sure it is tight to the body. If it's not, we can always apply tape to the front and back again, but it is just fine. With that, our final step would be to install the rooster. Now, I highly recommend installing the rooster after you get your birdhouse installed outside, if you're going to put it outside. If you're going to leave it inside as just a display or just decoration, you don't necessarily need to glue the rooster in place. Then you can just set the rooster in there and leave it like that. However, if you're going to put it outside, you want to fill this top gap where the rooster goes in. So you don't want rain getting into that little hole. So you want to make sure that's sealed. For now, I'm just going to set the rooster in there. And if the rooster did not fit into the top of the cupola roof, you can sand lightly around the dowel to get it to fit. All right, that does it for the birdhouse. We will set everything aside and allow it now to dry overnight before moving on to any finishing or anything like that. So I'm going to set it aside and we will be back. Welcome back. With the birdhouse complete, I've come outside so I can go over just a few tips on finishing your birdhouse. I'm not going to go over a whole lot. I'm just going to go over a couple of quick things. Number one, always before sanding, make sure you're wearing your N95 face mask. Very important. I'm outside. That's a great place to be. There's a light wind, so I'm not going to worry about the face mask today. Also, for filling gaps in between your panels, I highly recommend the Sherwin-Williams wood filler, although any one of the wood fillers will work just fine. You can use your fingers with this and it's real easy to use. For pre-finishing, before painting your birdhouse, I highly, highly recommend using shellac. Shellac is 100% natural. It's made from a lac bug, so it's completely 100% safe for birds. In fact, I would definitely recommend doing the inside of your birdhouse. Don't use paint on the inside of the birdhouse, but do definitely use shellac on the inside. That will protect it for many years to come. Also, you can apply shellac any number of ways, with a brush, with a roller. I prefer these little trim pads that I found. I think I paid about $3 for them, and it comes with 2 pads. They last forever. You can clean them out using denatured alcohol. They're absolutely wonderful. All right, the first thing we're going to do is fill some of the gaps in between the panels. I've taken about a pea-size piece of the wood putty that I have, and I'm just going to run my finger across the little gap there and force it down into the gap, and just go over the entire gap until it is filled. And then you can wipe it off, apply some more on there, wipe it off, wipe most of it off again, and it will just stay in the little groove. I'm also going to do the roof extensions and just go across the direction that you're trying to force it into. That will push it in. So if I'm filling this gap here, I'm going to go this way with it and just kind of force it down into that gap. And also, it's not a bad idea to just fill the edges a little bit. Then you're going to want to set that aside to dry. It only takes about 10 minutes or so to dry. In fact, you can actually see a lot of what we already did is dry. Once that's dry, you want to take your sandpaper and just knock off the edge and just take off the excess. Once that's dry, and once you've filled all the gaps, then it's time to do the shellac. And I'm not going to go through that right now. like I said, I do have other videos out there, so please check out the videos, and hopefully by the time you see this video, I will have a complete video on the entire finishing process of the birdhouse. But just read the directions on the can. The shellac goes a long way, so it doesn't take very much at all. So just take your time, and I'm working outside. I recommend working outside if you can. If you can't, use it in a well-ventilated area. Do not do it where you don't have any ventilation, and do wear the appropriate protection, both when you're sanding and when you're using the shellac. Again, like I said, the shellac is, once it's dry, it is 100% safe for birds and for humans for that matter. Okay, once you've finished filling all the gaps with wood putty, then you can apply the shellac before applying any paint. Once the shellac is done, you want to apply 2 coats of the shellac, at least 2 coats. I usually do 3 or 4 coats. Also, make sure that you do the bottom of the birdhouse also. So take the base off and do the bottom. I also recommend doing the inside. Do all the surfaces to protect your birdhouse. It's going to last a lot longer that way. All right, that's all I'm going to cover for now. Be sure to check for more videos on finishing birdhouses. We should have something up real soon. With that, let's take our birdhouse back in and we will wrap it up. Thank you very much. Please like and subscribe, help others find our birdhouses. We'll see you next time.